we have our opinion about it. You know,
and I'm entitled to my opinion.
Yeah, and that's
excuse me, guys.
Oh,
in front of the camera or talk about
I am in front of the camera. I'm entitled to my opinion. We want to talk about some of the things that are happening in the martial arts community. I mean, there's a lot of things shaking up at the moment, and I really think it requires some deep and meaningful discussion. First things first, I mean, we have gotten some good feedback on our last few videos. Thank you for supporting us. If you like this video, make sure you click the like button below. If you don't like it, just don't do anything. Just watch and leave it alone. Other than that, let's get started. In the Salat community, we are mourning the passing of a Salat practitioner, and by request, I was asked not to use the name or really reference too much of the incident. The details are still fuzzy, but the challenger was younger, about 40 plus, and the other person was 60 plus, say between 60 and 70. And as a result of that fight, the 70-year-old person had a heart attack and died. Okay, that shouldn't have happened. There's no way in hell that I, as a martial artist, would go over to some 70-year-old person's house and challenge a person in their home with their wife watching. Now, throughout the history of combat sports and combat in general, people have always wanted to know whose art is the best, whether it's Wing Chun, Hung Gar, Shaolin, Wu Tang. It's endless, right? But in this day and age, I don't know that it has the same gravitas as it did, say, in the 1200s or the medieval era. What do you think about that?
When I heard about these challenges that are going on, or what we see on, the reason why we wanted to do it on our channel is because we see it on YouTube. All you got to do is search challenge match. There's a lot going on in China, MMA versus Tai Chi versus Wing Chun, you name it, there's people challenging each other.
I think what's important is, first of all, just getting out what a challenge match is. I mean, at its heart, this is really something that came about because we wanted to know whose art was better, right? So one person would challenge a master of a school, and in some cases, if the master lost, the whole school closed, or he lost all of his students, he lost his livelihood. People challenge matches to settle rivalries between families, between clans, between organizations. People had challenge matches to settle personal grievances, personal grudges. There were challenge matches between gangs, between rivals.
When I went to New York City and got a tour, it was funny because the guy that took me to a tour, he pointed this out. Like, there was the school, the Grandmaster, and he wasn't a Grandmaster then, but his teacher, right? His school that he was trained on, and he said, see, pan to the right. You see that corner right there where all the cars are like passing through that little island? That's where the Tiger Clan would challenge the Eagle Clan, and that kind of thing. I'm like, whoa, this is like kung fu movies, but like in New York City in the 70s. And it's like, it's true, it went down.
What are you going to teach me? Snake fist style. My Eagle Claw is dedicated to wiping out the whole snake fist style. But we'll see.
There's 50 million reasons why these things happen, but in this day and age, why are we still seeing it? I think that if it's not really a personal beef or someone having an issue with regards to someone's school or how they're being trained, we're not seeing it. You know what I mean? That's the only context that it's really coming up in. And I feel personally, we right now get down to two camps. You're either a fighter or you're an artist. Okay? A martial artist is someone who's receiving a cultural inheritance, and it's been passed to them and they're going to pass it on. This does not necessarily make them a fighter. Okay? We see fighters in MMA. We see fighters in cage matches. We see fighters in street fights, and doing this type of thing. If you identify as a fighter and you want to give a challenge match to that person, that's great. But when a fighter challenges someone who is like a teacher, I see it as a bad matchup. Mm-hmm. Okay? I also want to say that, to me, a guideline that I've always seen is, if you're going to challenge somebody, you didn't challenge the master directly, you challenged his disciple, his number 1, his number 2, his number 3, but you didn't go in disrespect because of the age difference. It's one thing to be able to say, I can beat someone's master, it's another thing to find a reason to do it. Okay? And one of the things that I loathe in this day and era, and now I'll pass it to you, is when we see online people saying, you're not a real X, Y, and Z martial artist, and we're going to show you up. It's usually a lot of young guys, a lot of hungry lions, going over to some old person and saying, hey, you're not a jiu-jitsu instructor, let's roll. Oh, you're not a real stick fighter, let's do some stick fight. You don't really do this, but this person's twice your age. That makes no sense. I don't understand that to begin with. If you see MMA, it's weight groups, and usually people around the same age, they're around the same height, they're around the same physicality, they have a general knowledge of the same martial arts, and then with rules in place, they challenge each other. This Wild West bullshit that I'm going to sit here and go to your school in front of your students and disrespect you in your own house by trying to get to wrestle with an old man or to do some jiu-jitsu with an old man or to box with an old man makes no sense to me. And I lack all respect for people who do that.
In boxing, these professional or amateur matches, I mean, there's a lot going on there as far as preparation, as far as getting ready for that match. But at the end of the day, it's all set up. It's still for the safety of everyone involved.
Yeah, there's preparation involved.
Yeah.
You gotta be mentally prepared to enter into a thing. Like again, if somebody was to challenge me, I'd be like, yo, I might need a month. Depending on your age and your relative skill. I may take it, I may not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because no matter how much I say all the time, fight selection is one of the major components of winning matches. Right? No boxer said, I'm going to take all comers. Everybody ducked somebody.
Yeah.
Right? It's when we fight, where we fight, how we fight, who we fight is going to play a big part in how this goes down. So if you just show up at my thing, you were prepared. I wasn't. And now we got this myth that every martial arts is going to get you out of every situation and height and weight don't matter. It does matter. It plays a major role if I'm bigger than you. If you're smaller than me and I hit you in the liver, you don't have much cover in that, right? And you're like, well, I'll drop my iron shirt and I'll do all this and all that. Well, hey, you know what? Iron get dented too. Second of all, when that person was coming up, the art had only evolved to a certain point. These people, these newer generations, stand on the backs of these other individuals. And now they grow on top of what that other person did. So of course your art may be better. But without them, you wouldn't have an art to have.
Right.
Do you feel what I'm saying?
Right.
So if I go beat up on my grandfather because he helped me learn boxing, or my dad because he helped me box, right? I'm supposed to beat my dad's butt.
Yeah.
He taught me everything he knows. But he doesn't know everything I know.
Right.
Because I improved on what he gave me.
When we spar, like that's a form of a challenge to better yourself, to better the person that you're training with, right? It's a mutual agreement where both parties or whoever, if there's more than two people going at it, you agree together. Like these are the rules. This is the situation that we're in, and I mean, hopefully not, but in some places it might be to the death, but it's an agreement.
Right.
Right? It's a consensual agreement. So that to me right there is a sign of respect. We train this art, this craft, this way of life because we're learning to improve ourselves as well as improve, I think, other people. And with that comes respect. And so what we're seeing out there is when people are challenging somebody without that consent, that is a sign of disrespect. And on top of that, to do it in front of the school, to do it in front of the kids, I mean, there's...
In front of their wife?
Yeah.
In front of their husband, something like that, that's ridiculous. You can traumatize the person's students, you can traumatize the people that work there, you can traumatize a person's family. You know, when a person comes home and sees their parent or brother or somebody beat up and no one had an idea that this was going to happen, that can be very traumatic. So what I was always an impression is that martial arts instills a certain level of discipline and self-control, not just physical improvement or to give somebody skills that can help them get themselves out of a dangerous situation, but that builds character.
Self-discipline.
Self-discipline. Right. But if I'm not going to sit, I'm not self-disciplined if I can't tell myself not to go to someone's school.
Yeah.
You know, if I can't tell myself not to approach them at their home or at their place of work or at their place of business, that's not discipline. That's not character. That's not honorable. You know what I mean? I don't see how a person would think that their teacher would condone that. Another example is when we watch those style matches, which are quote unquote challenge matches in China, right? Where you got this boxer with one arm beating up this Wing Chun guy. Okay, they both had time to train, but the weight, the height, the skill level, very different. You can tell that the intensity of the boxer, the commitment, the confidence was all on his side. And what little confidence the Wing Chun dude did have was gone after he got nailed really hard. There's a dude on the street right now who's never taken a martial arts course that will wreck a bunch of people. There's some guy who's just getting out of prison right now who will just go to his school and demolish half his shit. You know, because that's who they are. They are fighters born and bred. They are just fighters. They're good at it. They like to do it. It's who they are.
And you know what's interesting about those people?
What?
They're not going out there and starting a fight.
They're not, because they know they can fight.
Yeah.
Nobody ever says, oh, I'm going to challenge that guy. Because, again, fight selection. People know where their limits are. People, in the case of this other guy, this Salat guy, it was an easy victim.
Yeah.
It was an easy victim, and that's really all it is. I think back in the days, and again, maybe it's romanticized to some extent, but when you did challenge, you sent the letter to the school, and the school had a thing. They said, hey, you know, we're going to take it or we're not. And if they didn't take it, they were a little dishonored, but they can live with it, right? If they took it, there was, you know, where we're going to do it at, what's going to happen, what's the consequences of doing this thing. Somebody was saying, I forget the MMA fighter's name, but he was saying, pointing out the Conor McGregor thing, when Conor McGregor threw the thing through the window.
Yeah.
He said one of two things. Either that was promotion for a fight between him and Khabib, right? Or it was him not wanting to fight Khabib. Because at the end of the day, if I want to fight somebody, we both fighters, and we both have the opportunity to make this match happen, then why not just didn't beat your ass in the ring?
Right. It'll happen. Yeah.
Right. So obviously it was something other than either I was scared to fight you or I was trying to promote the fight. Right? I think that's a really good thing. I think when people go to someone's school and they do that, they either don't want to fight and they just get pumped up by other people, right? Or they have a reckless disregard for someone else's safety. Because you never know. I'm telling you, I saw one where a guy, these four young jits guys go to this other guy's place, and whether he's a faker or not, they go into his school and they're like, you're gonna, I want to roll with you. I want you to prove that you're a black belt, right? You're lucky you didn't get shot. You run the risk of getting some heat put to you. So for me, I think it's really important that we don't continue to see people really getting harmed in these challenge matches, and that there's a little more constructive things around it.
As we're talking here, it made me think about the art that I had studied for a very long time. So I would hear about these challenges, or you would hear like these mythology stories and that kind of thing. And in the beginning, in the school, we all thought, well, that was cool, and And then as I got older and I'd hear this, I'd be like, does that really matter? Were people actually there? That actually people see it and know about it, and maybe like the Grandmaster would talk about it, but still, that's still just one opinion. To me, it's just bullshit, to be honest. It's like I do this stuff because I want to do it, and I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. I'm trying to prove to myself. You could get beaten one day and the next day not. And so,
do you think there's anything redeemable about it?
About challenges
Yeah,
or
challenge matching. Yeah.
when it's done in a respectful, mutual way, like consensual, like what we had talked about. I think because then everyone is on the same page going into it. Just like when you're sparring, when you're training with a partner, it's like do the drill. And we were talking about it last Sunday. Somebody like do the drill, and he threw a nice punch to the liver, right? Yeah, and it's like that's not the drill, right? And then as we're doing it, I'm like, oh, and I could see like 30 different things that I could do to that person, right? And then, but it's like I got to make that decision though. Am I gonna like put that person to the ground because they didn't do something? Do I talk to that person? I think this is that whole, you have to make that choice, that whole discipline thing, and how much and how little. This wasn't agreed upon, And I think a lot of young novice martial artists or people who never got that kind of training or exposure or way of thinking, maybe they didn't have an instructor that kind of encouraged them in a certain way.
I think that that's one of the pillars of martial arts. It's not necessarily hurting other people. It's having the control not to. The ability to sit there and say, I could, but it's not in my heart. And a lot of the traditional arts have that humility, which I've spoken about before, that humility built in. Right. So maybe in this particular scenario, what we are, it's not necessarily the person, but the teaching he received.
Yep.
The humility was not built into his teaching, especially to go up to a master and say, "Oh, I want to beat this guy up," and things like that.
I remember when I was a kid, like I was like always wanted to test my stuff out because I didn't know if it worked. Right? But I had to. One of my later teachers was like, "You have to define what work means. Did you survive? Does that mean work? Does cripple the individual? Does that mean work? Does win mean work? And if it does, then you have to define what a win is, right? Because to somebody, surviving is a win, right? So if you have these undefinable expectations, then you'll never reach them. Even if you win that challenge match, what was win? How far did you have to go to win? How many people had to pay? Was it exorbitant, right? This is where I think that the monetization of martial arts has harmed our community because people want to know how to punch somebody, but the art says that I need to teach you humility and make sure that you can be humane before I show you how to harm somebody. So you know when, where, and how to do these things within the context of being a human being, right? But people don't pay for that. People don't drop money in them studios for that. The overhead on that. But when you train in a park, when you train in a space where you ain't got that overhead, that's got to be a very instrumental part of what we do. That's one of the reasons why I think that it's important for us to go eat dinner afterwards, after training, because you know what? You got to build that camaraderie. Because, yes, somebody may have got punched in the liver outside, but it's like you guys are still friends. You guys are still cool. I still got to get that respect. You guys still sit down and break bread, right? And if something happens, we can all do it together. If somebody got a concussion, like, you know what I mean? I need to be able to watch you because you're still my responsibility, right? If I had a school, I wouldn't be able to do that. I got to turn the lights off, turn the air conditioner off, clean all the stuff, close this down so it doesn't cost me money. You feel what I'm saying? I've got to make sure I'm giving a curriculum that's in line with what everybody else is doing so everybody doesn't steal my students. So I think when people are in it solely for the money, the art suffers. When people are into it solely for the art, the business of it suffers, right? But we have to find some medium where we're instilling a certain level, we're empowering our students, we're developing a sense of not only humanity, but camaraderie and respect for life, period.
I've been following some of these Instagram fighters, like MMA fighters or whatever, right? And it's really interesting to see how there's like a before and after picture. They get all hyped up, excited, and maybe there's some like pictures where they're facing off each other, right? Oh, it's going down on Saturday, right?
Right.
And then the next picture is them hugging or them shaking hands, and sometimes, the face is really messed up, blood, or sometimes just not too bad.
I don't want to act like people not wanting to be a part of this is a cop out too.
Yeah.
Because people don't want to get involved because they don't know to what extent they might get hurt.
Right.
But that's also how bullies survive and thrive. You know what I mean? People don't stop bullying from happening because they're scared to be involved, that they're going to get bullied or that their family is going to be pulled into something. And I understand that. You know what I mean? But if you don't stand up and say enough is enough, then it will continue to happen and it will get worse. It's one person now, but it'll be 2, 3, 4, 5 people later. Am I dissing the people who fight challenge matches? No, I'm not dissing people who fight challenge matches, but I am giving my opinion. At the end of the day, I'm not. You do what you do, it's your life. The people who accept challenge matches, you do what you do, it's your life. But at the end of the day, I still have my opinions and I'm entitled to them, right? And maybe some of these things trigger you. If they do, write it on the wall down below. You know what I mean? Put your name out there. Don't hide behind some fucking random emoji with no name on it. Say who you are, where you're from, what style you represent, or if you don't, you know, and then give your opinion and make sure it's valid. And then let's have that discussion in the comments below. So I think this was a good show. Yeah. And again, if you like it, click the like button. If you really want to see more of what we have to do, because we have lots of stuff coming up, push that subscribe button. And for any comments, leave them below. And if you want to support us, make sure you pick up the Pervy Sage shirt. You know what I'm saying? We'll leave a link in the comments below if you're really interested in these shirts. But again, supporting the Pervy Sage shirts supports us and lets us keep doing what we're doing. And we hope to see you soon. All right? For OR Black,
Pete Wongman.
This was Head to Head. Have a good day.
How do I start? All right.
Leave it.